Ladies and gentlemen, Commanding General, United States Army Europe, Lieutenant General Donald M. Campbell, Jr.
That was very formal, thank you. Always forget to add the junior. I want to thank you for doing that. Hey, Vicenza, it's great to be with you this morning. Hooah! Oh, come on. Come on, you can do better than that. Hooah! Okay, great. We are honored today to have two great Americans here. First, the 38th Chief of Staff of the Army, General Raymond Odierno, and his lovely wife, Linda. Linda, thank you for coming to Europe, spending time with the boss. Linda has been an Army spouse for 37 years. She's had two soldiers serve, as you know, her son and her husband. And she does more for Army soldiers, civilians, and families than you'll ever know. She's a terrific First Lady for the Army. And Linda, thanks for all you do. We love you. Thank you. Cool. We are honored today to have the Chief of Staff of the Army in Vicenza and in the United States Army Europe and with the United States Army Africa team, the 173rd, and everybody else from the Vicenza garrison, excuse me, Dave, or the community. He's counseling me yesterday. It's not a garrison, sir, it's a community. We're honored to have the Chief here. As you know, he's commanded from company all the way up to the 4-star level, 2, 3, and 4-star in combat. The thing you need to know is the 12 years that this Army has been in combat, he's served 6 of them himself in combat. So he is like you. He has done multiple turns like this brigade and like a whole bunch of other soldiers in this room. He's a soldier's general. He's a soldier. He's our leader. Welcome, the 38th Chief of Staff of the Army, General Raymond Odierno.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me? Please, everybody sit down. Thank you, Don. General Campbell, thanks for that great introduction. I wish my parents were here to hear that. That would have been good. It's a great honor for Linda and I to have the chance to come down here to Vicenza. And actually, for me, it's always special coming to Italy. My grandfather was born in Italy and then came to the United States just about 100 years ago. He grew up north of Naples in a small town called Sarna, so it's always great for us to come back here to where my ancestors came from. It always means a lot to me when we have the opportunity to come back. But it's more important for me to come back and visit Vicenza community because of the importance of the community and everything going on here. And, first I want to thank General Donahue, the commander of U.S. Army AFRICOM. Pat, thanks a lot. I appreciate everything you do. I want to thank the great Sky Soldiers of the 173rd Airborne. I want to thank Dave Buckingham, the community commander. Really a great team here. And the reason it's so important I come down here is because of the impact that you have on everything going on today in the world. U.S. Army Africa is playing an important role as we step up our operations on the African continent. It's a continent that's growing in importance. Unfortunately, we're starting to see some terrorist organizations attempting to take root there, so the work that they are doing to shape the operational environment and prevent terrorism from taking hold is incredibly important to our national security. And I had a chance to spend the afternoon with them yesterday. I enjoyed very much their vision, where they're headed. So I really appreciate the great work that the U.S. Army AFRICOM staff is doing. And then it's important for me to come back and have the opportunity to visit with some of the soldiers, the 173rd Airborne, the Sky Soldiers. I know you just came back, and actually you're still, I guess, some of you on block leave. I think block leave ends this weekend. I feel I have a special relationship with the 173rd. During OIF-1, when I commanded the 4th Infantry Division, 173rd was part of the division for the first year in Iraq. And so I have a personal relationship with this brigade, a great brigade who was deployed numerous times to both Iraq and Afghanistan. On every occasion has just performed superbly. I had a chance to visit, I think in February, I had a chance to visit the brigade, and I had a chance to see the great work that you're doing on the ground. And probably this last time over there was probably some of the most difficult time, because this is a time when we're transitioning over to Afghan responsibility. And for us, that's hard to do because we know that we can do it better, that we know what we're doing, but to be successful in Afghanistan, it's important to turn the responsibility over to them. And for us to be successful is for them to be successful. And the job that you did over there in doing that was quite incredible. I was there in October, then came back in February, and the difference in 6 months was quite significant to me. It was very noticeable on the ground, the great progress that we've made in turning over responsibility. So I want to thank you for the great hard work that you did. You were in a very tough area. You did a great job, and so thank you, and welcome back home. I also want to thank the community here for the great support that you gave the families, the programs you have in place to support our soldiers. I really appreciate everything that our civilians do every day to support our great Army here in Vicenza. So for me, it's a great honor to be here today, and that's why I wanted to have the opportunity to talk to you. So I want to take about 5 or 10 minutes to kind of give you the lay of the land of my viewpoint of how I see things in the Army. And what I really want to do is hear your questions. I'm here to have an opportunity to hear your concerns or whatever questions you might have. And I'll try to answer most of them. If I can, I'll write them down and get you an answer later on. So as we stand here today, I always start out by saying that today, as I stand here, the U.S. Army has 80,000 soldiers deployed. We have nearly 60,000 soldiers deployed in Afghanistan. We have another 10,000 to 12,000 deployed in Kuwait. We have soldiers deployed to Turkey, Jordan, Qatar, many other places in the Middle East. We also have 90,000 soldiers deployed to over 150 countries, to include here in Italy, Germany, but most recently in the news, the 28,000 soldiers we have in South Korea, working with the South Korean Army every day to ensure we maintain stability on the Korean Peninsula. The reason I bring that up is our Army, your Army, plays an important role in our nation's security every single day. And you all play a huge part in that. And it's important that we never forget that. So, what's posing on everybody's mind, at least in Washington, is the budget. And so I've just spent the last couple weeks testifying with the Secretary of the Army on our budget for the future. I'll have to do that a few more times, trying to inform Congress what we need and hopefully get them to fund us at a level as necessary to sustain a readiness at the right levels so we can do the missions that they are asking us to do all around the world. We have a problem in 13 with money. It's a problem, and when I say 13, that's through September 30th, that's the fiscal year. Because for two reasons. Since Congress was not able to agree on a budget for 13, sequestration went into effect, which is an automatic $12 billion cut to the Army. $6 billion of that is what we call operations and maintenance funds, which is training, sustainment, and other things. And then in addition to that, the costs in Afghanistan have been a bit higher than were originally planned. So we have about a $7.8 billion shortfall in funding Afghanistan. And our, of course, top priority is to ensure that we fund Afghanistan, so we have to take money out of the Army's budget in order to fund Afghanistan. So that puts us in about a $13 billion hole for the rest of this year. So we had to do a couple of things that really we didn't want to do. We've had to reduce some training. We've canceled 7 combat training center rotations. We have reduced the amount of dollars available for training for the rest of the year. And then we've had this conversation about having to furlough civilians. Originally 21 days, currently 14 days. These are all very difficult problems. We're continuing to let Congress know that would help us if they were able to continue to give us more authorities to move money around so we could solve some of these problems for the rest of the year. My concern, though, is more about longer-term readiness, and that we have to have the money to sustain readiness so we are prepared to answer the call when it comes. Because unfortunately, my assessment of the world today is it's probably more unstable than it's been in my 37 years in the military. All you have to do is pick up the newspaper in the morning and you find out there's something going on with North Korea, there's something going on in Syria, there's something going on with Iran. We're still working in Afghanistan. There's issues with some of the new governments in Tunisia and Egypt and all other places. So there's a lot of unsettling problems that we might be asked to do. And it's important that we are given the money to ensure we can train properly, because our priority is we will never send a soldier on a mission without being properly trained, not having the right equipment, and not having the leaders that are capable of leading them. That's our priorities. So we'll continue to do that. So as we look to the future, what is the future Army going to look like? I think most of you know we're in the process of reducing the size of the active Army from 570,000 to 490,000 people. As I stand here today, in the first 2 years, we're down to about 530,000, so we're about halfway done. And we've done that mostly through natural attrition, and I think it's gone pretty well so far. In June, the Secretary of the Army and I will announce the 14, 15, 16, and 17 force structure cuts, which will come mainly out of the continental United States, because we've already taken force structure out of Europe. The 2 brigades out of Germany and 5th Corps headquarters, when they come back, will deactivate. So we'll then begin to reduce some of our force structure in the United States. I'm comfortable with going down to 490,000. I think that's a good number. I think that enables us to keep the right capabilities. But I'm not sure, depending on the decisions made in Congress, whether we'll be able to sustain that level or not. And those are decisions that will have to be made as we move into the future. Now, as I look ahead, we're also looking at what do we want our Army to be in the future. And the 2 things that we want is we want an Army that is globally responsive and regionally engaged. And we need an Army that can fight and win our nation's wars. We've always said that. We will always be here to fight and win our nation's wars. But that's no longer enough. We now have an Army that is globally responsive and regionally engaged. What do I mean by that? Globally responsive is that we're going to develop scalable and tailable forces of many sizes, who can move at many speeds, who can operate in many environments in order to respond to our nation's national security needs. Whether it be company task forces, battalion task forces, a combination of combat support task forces, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief capabilities, so we're able to operate decisively across a broad spectrum of responses. We have to go back to an expeditionary mindset, which means we might have to deploy in small packages to places that are not into immature theaters for shorter periods of time. That's what we mean by globally responsive. Working with our sister services, the Air Force and the Navy, to ensure that we have the mobility strategically to move around the world. Regionally engaged means that we're going to have forces that are aligned to regions that will allow us to do everything from operational deployments to building partner capacity to training foreign nations to doing joint exercises in order for us to build their capabilities and to shape that area of operation so we can reduce the instability that we see around the world in support of the combatant commanders. And U.S. Army AFRICOM is leading the way in developing this new strategy that we have, as they are using regionally aligned forces in order to engage, train, and provide more stability and security on the Africa continent. Those are the kind of things that we're looking for as an Army in the future. One that I think will be exciting for us, have the opportunity to go to many different places around the world to support many different armies around the world. The other priorities we have are leader development. The one advantage that we have over every other nation in the world is our ability to develop leaders, non-commissioned officers and officers. And we're going to adjust how we do that because the world is changing. The environments that we operate in are more complex. Our technologies are changing. And we have to ensure that we have our leader development programs, all our non-commissioned officer education programs, our officer education programs, are developing our leaders in order to operate in this environment. So in about 30 days, I'll be releasing a new leader development strategy that over the next 2 or 3 years will adjust how we do our leader development in NCOES and officer education system. It'll also talk about how we manage talent and how we do assignments to broaden the abilities of our non-commissioned officers and officers, as well as our Department of the Army civilians. And it'll address all 3 components of leadership. The other thing we're going to focus on is the importance of professionalism. And the one thing I've learned over the last 12 years of combat operations is that the American population believe in our military. They believe in it because they believe that we have the moral and ethical values that are necessary for us to project to other nations. As we conduct our military operations, they believe that we are given a responsibility to protect our nation, but also develop others who understand the importance of moral and ethical values. So as we build a profession, there's a few things that I think are necessary. We need leaders that are competent in their abilities. That means competent in your MOS, competent in your area of responsibility, but we also need people of high character. Those who understand the importance of values, who understand how to make moral judgments in very difficult situations. It's also important to understand the importance of the profession in terms of commitment. Commitment to your unit. Commitment to each other. Commitment to the Army as a whole. So we want an Army that is competent, high character, and committed. And we're going to continue to talk about those key components and values as we move the Army forward. So our priorities are globally responsive, regionally engaged, develop the best leaders in the world, and to continue to have a professional Army that is respected not only by the American people, but respected by the world as we continue to conduct operations. And that's where we're headed. And we're going to do this in a time when we're reducing the size of the Army. But the one thing I know is we're beginning today at a position of strength, because we have the most capable leaders with combat experience that we've ever had since I've been in the Army, 37 years. We have experienced leaders at every level who understand the struggles of combat, who understand what it takes to be successful in complex situations. So we're starting from a position of strength as we move this Army forward. And it's going to take all of us in this room, young and old, in order to move us forward. And we got to do this together. And that's what we're going to be focused on over the next several years. Finally, I want to make sure that as part of this are our families, and ensuring that we continue to take care of our families. Yes, we're going to have some budget reductions, but priorities will still be based on ensuring that we have the right family programs and the right programs for our soldiers in order for them to continue to serve and make the sacrifice that we ask them to do. For our soldiers, we are starting the Soldier for Life program. Soldier for Life program is one that from the time you come in the Army, we will continue to have programs that take care of you, and when you want to leave the Army, we will assist you in ensuring that you make an easy transition so you continue to contribute to society and you continue to carry on the moral and ethical values that represents our Army. Because I believe it's important that we contribute not only while we're serving in the Army, but when we continue to serve out in our communities. So we're putting a program together that will help soldiers transition if that's the decision they make, to help them to ensure they get a chance to do what they want, whether it's furthering their education or working at a certain vocation, and helping them to get jobs as they leave the Army. Yesterday, if you had the opportunity, I hadn't seen it on AFN last night, The First Lady was talking about this at the White House. And they're assisting us in developing programs to help our veterans. It's important that we remember our veterans, those who have come before us and those that are current veterans getting ready to leave the Army, that we take care of them and make sure we honor their sacrifices. It's my opinion we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, those who sacrificed from the time all the way back to when this country was formed, the United States was formed in 1776, through all of our major conflicts to now. Those who served, those who gave their lives. We stand on their shoulders for what they've done, that provided us the opportunity to live in the country that we do. It's our responsibility to carry that on as we go forward. And we'll build programs that allow us to do that. Let me just finish by saying it's always an honor to be here among fellow soldiers who've dedicated themselves and continue to sacrifice for the security of our nation. So with that, what I'd like to do now is take a few questions. And I'm not going to leave until I get some questions, so somebody's going to have to step up. I think we got microphones on the side.
Morning, sir. I'm Sergeant Broach with the 1st of 503rd.
Cool.
And my question today for you, sir, is I know you touched a little bit on the budget constraints, but with the current budget constraints and Air Force assets, more and more we see them grounded. Is there a plan in place for an airborne unit such as ourselves to maintain jump currency?
Yeah, I mean, there's some challenges to that right now. It's challenges for the rest of this year with some of our budget and also the availability of airframes. But we're going to work through that. We're going to work closely with the Air Force. We're going to work with some of our coalition partners in order for us to continue to sustain our ability, because it's an important capability that we have to sustain in my mind. So it could be tough for the next couple of months, but we're going to work it and make sure that we're able to sustain our airborne capacity here in Vicenza.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Morning, sir. Specialist News, 1st and 503rd. My question is how, with the budget cuts, how will we be able to fully train and support a 3rd Maneuver Battalion within the brigade?
So what we're going to do, thank you for the question. So as we reduce from 570 to 490, one of the things we're going to do is probably make a decision here in the next couple of weeks to reorganize our brigade combat teams to add a 3rd maneuver unit. The reason we're doing that is it allows us to cut some overhead, some brigade structure out, but it allows us to maintain a higher number of maneuver units. And we think that's actually a more efficient way to do business, which would free up readiness dollars for us to continue to train them. So thanks, I appreciate the question. Thank you. Who else?
Sir, unlike General McChrystal and General Petraeus, your public image has stayed pretty flawless. Have you ever considered a run at the presidency in 2016 or 2020?
So first I want to make very clear, nobody's flawless. I want to make sure that you understand that. No, I won't do that. My wife has given me very strict instructions that when I leave the chief, I'll have almost 40 years of service, and she's told me it's time for us to retire, so we'll probably retire and do something else. You know, it's important to continue to serve, though. I appreciate the question you asked. I'm not sure I would be best suited to serve in public office, but I might find different ways to stay involved after I retired in order to continue to move forward with the issues that I think are important to our national security. And to be honest with you, issues important to our veterans. And I think that's what I want to focus on, is how we take care of those who've served. So when I decide to leave the Army, I think that's probably what I'm going to focus on. But thank you very much for the question. I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, originally I'm from New Jersey, so 2 years ago I got an email and they said, do you want to run for the governor of New Jersey? And I wrote back, no. Anybody else? Please, anything at all. Don't be afraid to ask a question. That's why I'm here. I want to answer any questions you might have. Any family members or civilians have questions? Yeah. Great question. So you asked about sequestration after this year. So the way I explain it to people is, right now we have what I consider to be 4 budgets in front of us for the coming years. I don't want to get into too much detail, but it takes this explanation to explain what your question. We have the President's budget that was just submitted on the 10th of April. That has about $117 billion worth of cuts in the Department of Defense over 10 years, mostly in the out years. That's a very, we can support that, and that allows us to sustain ourselves in pretty much the way we are now, in my opinion. We have a House budget that has $150 billion of cuts in the Department of Defense. We have a Senate budget that has $250 billion of cuts over 10 years. So what we need is for them to come to agreement on that budget. And the problem has been is they're using Department of Defense as a lever in order for them to come to agreement on more difficult issues that they have. So my concern is if they can't come to an agreement, then full sequestration will go into effect next year, which would be another $500 billion of reductions and $42 billion to the Department of Defense and about $14 billion to the Army next year. And that's significant. The steepness of it is very difficult. And it makes us be out of balance between end strength, readiness, and modernization. So I'm very concerned about it. And that's what we've been testifying to, that frankly, that's simply unacceptable. And so we're hoping that this summer, that they will come to an agreement on a budget. But we'll see. We haven't done so well on that so far. But I just want you to know that we're very engaged with all of those involved, trying to explain to them the impacts that would have on all the services. I talk specifically about the Army. Anybody else?
Good morning. June Pineda, Army wife. Okay. I'm asking a question on behalf of, I'm an Army spouse. So my question is, what is the big Army doing to help ensure as we move with our husbands from place to place that we maintain our educational level and job skill levels when we're moving every couple of years and it's hard to get jobs?
Yes. Great question. And this thing called joining forces I just talked about, actually the First Lady and Dr. Jill Biden, the Vice, is trying to help us with this because this is a real problem. And the problem we have is states have different rules. It's about the states. So there's 2 issues with education. We now have the Military Child Education Coalition, which is trying to help us to get common levels of cooperation and standards across the many states that have military installations. They've gotten quite a few to sign up, which helps us in kids transferring credits and making sure the education levels are pretty good. And we've made some good progress there. One of the real tough issues, though, is employment for spouses. And there's 2 issues. One is when you move, do they recognize your credentials as you go to another state, whether it's teaching, whether it's being a nurse, whether it's being a lawyer, or whatever. So we're working on that. The other thing we're trying to work on is getting some priority of hiring to spouses. We're not there yet. But we're working on those initiatives, on those 2 specific initiatives to help us, to help spouses when they move. Because we think it's important that Army families move as an Army unit, and we want to make sure that we make that as easy as possible. So we're working with each one of the states, and the White House has been very helpful on this issue. They're really trying to work this with us as well. So we haven't solved the problem yet, but we're very conscious of it, and we're working several different pieces to help. So it's a really good question, and thank you for that. Anybody else? Yeah.
Sir, Lieutenant Hicks, AGC 173rd. You talked about your new strategy you're going to release in 30 days regarding the leadership development of our non-commissioned officers and officers. Will that plan to checks out the next 2 to 3 years in consideration of budget cuts, or is it planning to increase budget?
No, so first off, leader development strategy is very inexpensive. We can do this in a way that doesn't cost a lot of money. And that's why I want to make sure we get it right. And we're going to invest whatever money necessary to do this because it's my top priority, is leader development. So it's gonna move forward no matter what happens with the budget. And one of the things we're going to talk about is what are the kind of, how do we manage officers and non-commissioned officers to get them a broad range of opportunities, because, you know, as I look to the future, we need leaders who can operate in an environment that has cultural, social, economic, as well as military issues. And I think you need a broader range of experiences in order to be successful there. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about. We're also going to focus on mission command and the ability to operate with our doctrine of mission command in terms of how we solve problems. And we're going to start to work our education around this concept of mission command. But we're going to do that no matter what. We're moving forward on that.
Star Norman, 173rd Brigade. Excuse me. Sir, do you foresee the U.S. Army having a more active role in the Syrian conflict? And if so, what role would that be and why?
Thank you. I don't know. What I do know is we have a headquarters forward in Jordan that's doing planning, developing lots of different courses of action. Ultimately, the decision will be up to the president on what he wants to do and what he wants to commit the United States to. I will say that the use of chemical and biological weapons is concerning to a lot of people around the world, and if that happens, that could drive us to action. I think we'd like to do it in an international context, not unilateral. So we'd like to do it with international partners. I think one mission could be for us to secure chemical and biological sites in Syria. But you know, we'll work several different courses of action. So could we be involved? Yes. I think we'll be very careful on how we get involved in that. And I think we'll try to do it within an international context.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone got a question?
Can't hear you.
Name BSP 173rd. Sir, how do you expect the furloughs to affect DoD schools?
We will try to do everything we can to avoid impacts on DoD schools. We're working with DoDEA, which is the Department of Defense Education System, to try to come up with ways to ensure that schools are not delayed, they're manned in a way that can continue to deliver education. So our intent is there should be little impact, but we're working with them very hard on that issue. You know, with the furloughs, let me talk a little bit about the furloughs. So it was 21 days, it's now 14 days. We're still working hard to try to get it down to 7 days or to 0 days, but we have to find, the cost of the Army is about $730 million. And so we got to find $730 million. I already told you we're short about $12 billion. So we got to find about $730 million to do that. We're working hard to try to figure that out. Because we don't want to furlough anybody. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's appropriate for the level of dedication we have from our civilians. And it's something right now we're trying to avoid. But right now we're down to a 14-day furlough. And it affects a lot of things, from family programs to education to medical care that we have. So we're trying to do the best we can to take care of that. But we still have some work to do. There'll have to be a decision pretty quickly, because for a 14-day furlough, I think we have to have a final decision by June 1st. So we're working our way through that now. Thanks for the question. Yeah. Well, first, there's been no discussion of courses of action yet. There's going to be a commission that's going to be formed to take a look at this. That has not been formed yet. So I still think we're a couple years out from having a decision on that. The one thing, though, that's been very clear by both the President and everyone else who's talked about this is that all of those currently on active duty would be grandfathered. But frankly, that's great for us. I'm happy about that. But we got to make sure we have the right retirement system that enables us to sustain an all-volunteer force that recognizes the sacrifice that are made by our soldiers and families, and we're very dedicated towards that as we develop courses of action. You know, the Joint Chiefs will be involved with giving a recommendation on that. I'm not, you know, we'll take a look at my opinion now. It might change, is that the savings involved in changing is not enough for us to change the system as we have it now. But my mind might change if somebody comes up with something that's, I think, is appropriate. Anybody else?
Sir, Specialist Page, 173rd BSB Bravo Company. My question is, if Congress doesn't reach an agreement on the budget for fiscal 24, 2014, will the TA get hit again?
Will
TA take a hit again?
Tuition assistance?
Right, sir.
Well, tuition assistance is an important program that we want to sustain. The problem we have, you can sit down. The problem we have now is that tuition, this year we allocated $330 million for tuition assistance. We've already spent about $400 million. So we got a $70 million deficit. So that's the problem. So we got to figure out how we become more efficient and effective in using our tuition assistance. It's not that it's going to end, but I think we have to review the program to make sure that it's a fair program, and how do we come up with courses of action that reduce costs but still allow soldiers to further their education. So I think over the next couple months we're going to have some serious discussion about this. But we will definitely have tuition assistance. It might be a little different than it is right now, but not significantly different. We just got to figure out how we can reduce costs a little bit. You're welcome.
Sir, Lieutenant Jelinas, first of the 503rd. You were talking about a new leader development program. I'm curious, is there any planned changes to the Army personnel system to give our leaders the chance to pursue educational and professional opportunities that they desire, and also to give units the flexibility to hire the leaders that they want on their team? That's
part of the review. And so there's this thing about, it's about broadening, it's about now, obviously we're going to create opportunities for continuing education for some leaders. It won't be all leaders, but there's going to be more than there is now. We're also going to this thing, we did a pilot, it's Green Pages, which was done with the engineers, where it's a system of hiring people, where it's interaction between those who would do the hiring and the officer that might be interested. And then a lot of cases in our personnel records, it doesn't really cover all the skills that somebody might have. There might be some things that we don't know about, experiences they had not in the Army, that might give them a certain way. So we want to start having this interaction that would allow us to maximize the talent that we have in the Army. It's my position that right now we maximize about 60% of our talent. So we got a long ways to do to really maximize all the talent that we have and all the abilities that our leaders have to make sure we're matching them with the right jobs. So we're trying to come up with different ways. The other thing we're going to talk about is 360-degree evaluations as well. We're going to start that self-development tool for all leaders as they come in the Army. And we're looking at beginning a program. We're doing a pilot right now for battalion and brigade commanders doing a 360. And this is to get after and provide feedback to commanders and officers and non-commissioned officers about how other people view their leadership skills, techniques, so they can do self-development, self-improvement. It's probably on. He just had to turn it on.
Okay. My question, sir, is for ACAP. A lot of emphasis, I think, is put on ACAP. Like, soldiers and people that were probably going to come out over there. But what's going to AIT, a lot of people aren't impressed. So when we get on the outside world, the work that we've done, on the inside, it's not like it's a transferable skill as American soldiers going into civilian aspect to say, well, we've done this, we've been certified, and there's nothing else, we have to go to school. When we've already done it.
First of all, great question and great point.
There's two things we're doing. So there's a bill that was passed in November of 2011 called the VOW Act. The VOW Act, I don't know what it stands for, I don't know what the acronym is, but the VOW Act is expanding ACAP. So it's now done a year out and it has specific things that we must accomplish within that 1 year. And part of it is counseling, education counseling, early on helping developing and understanding the skills that an individual has and how we match that to the outside as they begin to get jobs. So that went into effect in November 12th, so it's been in effect about 6 months. And we're starting to see some benefits to it now. But I think it'll continue to expand. On the second point that you made, so what we're doing is training and doctrine committee are going back and reviewing all our AITs to see if we can get them closer to the qualification standards. The problem we have is each state has a different standard. So there's not a federal standard, you know. So if you're a nurse and you want to go work in Alabama or California or New Jersey, the standards are different in every state. So what we're trying to do is first get states to recognize our qualifications. I mean, I was amazed when I got into this. The two largest groups that have trouble getting employment are medics, which I find hard to believe, with the incredible experience that we have, and it has to do with certification. And the second is truck drivers, because each state has different qualifications for becoming drivers. So we're working with them in order to get our qualifications as close and get them to accept the Army qualification program. So it's going to take us a little bit while to do this, but we're working towards that. So really a great question. Thank you. Okay.
At this time, we will recognize the awardees.
Hey, Andy. Just stay right here and give them to me. Okay.
The following individual is being recognized for his outstanding contribution to the Vicenza and Livorno communities. Mr. Kambiz Razagi is being awarded the Meritorious Civilian Service Award for superior civilian service while serving as United States Army Garrison Vicenza's Supervisory General Engineer and Director of Public Works from April 2007 through May 2013. Mr. Razi's extraordinary leadership, caring effort, and dedication to Installation Management Command Europe and United States Army Garrison Vicenza's mission accomplishment provided his employees, soldiers, civilians, and family members with a positive and lasting impact. His efforts are in keeping with the finest traditions of civilian service and reflect great credit upon him, the United States Army Garrison Vicenza, and the United States Army. Signed, Lieutenant General Michael Ferreter, U.S. Army Commanding. Sergeant First Class Jesse J. Miller is being awarded the Army Commendation Medal with V device for exceptional valorous service while serving as United States Army Squad Leader. Sergeant First Class Miller's courage, dedication to the mission, and personal sacrifice under direct enemy fire led to the successful leadership that saved the lives of several paratroopers. He truly exemplifies his ability to perform above and beyond fiduciary duty. His actions bring great credit upon him, 2nd Battalion Airborne, 503rd Infantry Regiment, the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team, and the United States Army. Signed, Andrew M. Rawling, Colonel, Infantry Commanding. Staff Sergeant Jeffrey A. Ritchie is awarded the Purple Heart for wounds received in action on 30 October 2012 in Afghanistan. Signed, Honorable John M. McHugh, Secretary of the Army.
Thanks for your service. Thanks.
Sergeant Scott M. Gerwitz is being awarded the Bronze Star Medal with V device for heroism and valor in Wardak Province, Afghanistan on 29 September 2012. Sergeant Gerwitz distinguished himself as both the section sergeant and the platoon sergeant of 3rd Platoon, Destin Company, 2nd Battalion Airborne, 503rd Infantry Regiment, while engaging insurgent forces at Tactical Checkpoint Columbus. After 1/3 of the platoon was rendered wounded or killed in action, Sergeant Gerwitz immediately sprang into action, leading the attack against a reinforced bunker complex, engaging and killing multiple insurgents, and coordinating the assessment and loading of casualties. His performance reflects great credit upon himself, Task Force Rock, Task Force Bayonet, Combined Joint Task Force 1, and the United States Army. Signed, Honorable John M. McHugh, Secretary of the Army.
Well, again, it's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to give these awards to our great civilians who support us for many, many years, who make a real difference in the community, and obviously these 3 great soldiers who in combat have shown both personal courage as well as leadership in the jobs we've given them. And it's individuals like this that make our Army great. So it's an honor for me to be here, and let's give them one last round of applause. Well, thank you very much. Again, it's an honor for me to be here. I'm very proud to wear this uniform with all of these great soldiers that are sitting here today, and also who live here in the Vicenza community, as well as all of those in U.S. Army Europe. The reason I've stayed in the Army for so long is because of you, because of the qualities that you possess, because of the dedication that you have, and because of your commitment to your partners, your buddies, your unit in the Army, and your nation. So may God bless all of you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you, and I'll see you on the high ground. Army strong.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for